nerds, and welcome back to my channel. I have finally got my July wrap up for you, and it was a great reading month, and my camera is falling. Oh dear. You gonna stay? You gonna stay? Oh my goodness. Yes? Okay. Anyway, so July was a great reading month. I read 27 books, and I'm going to give you, here's my stats for that. I'm going to try to keep better track of my stats because I think, I don't know, it's kind of cool to see the different genres I'm reading and all of that. So, 27 books total. I read 9 middle grade, 8 young adults, and 20 adult reads. Sorry, not 20 adult reads, 10 adult reads. And then out of those, here are the genres or formats, and some of them kind of cross categorized. So 9 of them were ARCs, 7 audiobooks, 14 were from the library, and 7 I own, which I'm very proud of that number because I'm trying to read more books that I own. 1 was nonfiction, 10 were fantasy, 5 romance, 4 thrillers, 1 dystopian, 1 graphic novel, 6 contemporary, 3 novel and verse, 1 sci-fi, 1 horror, and 2 historical fiction. And my favorite books, I read a lot. I read a lot of books this month, and I'm going to go over all of those. My favorites, I guess, after looking back, which is, again, really hard, Fourth Wing, just because of the fun I had, by Rebecca Yarros. The Wicked King by Holly Black, that one because of how it tore me apart. And I just love the world in that story, or in that book, in that series. And then Forever Is Now by Mariama J. Lockington. She is one of my favorite middle grade authors, and she wrote a YA. It's in verse about anxiety, and it just broke my heart. I had so many emotions, and I love when I can feel so emotionally exhausted and invested in a book. I just love it. And so hands down, that one was my favorite. So, okay, let's take a look at the books in more detail. This is the order that I read them. So the first book I finished for July was called Wild Rescuers: Escape to the Mesa. This is by Stacy Plays. Stacy Plays is a YouTuber, and she plays Minecraft, and so these books are inspired by her YouTube. And my daughter, I got these books for her, and so then she wanted me to read them. I listened to them on audiobook, and they're a lot of fun. They're quick. Highly recommend these for younger middle grade because again, they're a lot of fun. It's survival. It's a girl who's been abandoned. They don't know what happened to her family, a helicopter crash possibly, and she's being raised by these wolves. And it's just kind of a fun thing about environment. There's some climate things going on and just survival. And there's also a little bit of mystery in there. The next book I read was Fourth Wing. And so of course, this was one of my favorite books. The world, just being able to get lost in a book just makes it a favorite. It's not that this was any literary masterpiece or made me think. It was just a great just fantasy world, and I loved all of the characters, such a diverse cast of characters, and yeah, just a blast to read it. Another book that I thoroughly enjoyed was Fat Witch Summer. This one made me laugh so hard in some places, but also had a lot of heart to it and a lot of things going on. So there's the main character, but it also has multiple points of view, and they go on a road trip to try to, gosh, I forgot what it's called, but they're trying to basically manifest their powers in a way of their own choosing. So when they turn a certain age, they are told what direction in their witchcraft they will go, and so they're wanting to choose on their own. So I love this independence and strength in these books, but also, she discovers more about her place in the society and also bringing about change. And the familiars in this book are a lot of fun, and just it was a great summer adventure, but also there's a lot of depth in this book as well. Another witchy book was The Secret Society of Irregular Witches. This one was another one that had just a lot of great heartfelt moments, but also a lot of depth. And the main character, she feels like she has to constantly move. She can't get attached to anyone because of her witchcraft, and it's a found family. She gets called to this home to train these three girls that are witches, but her family, they're not, and so they're trying to train her and build their abilities. And so anyway, it's beautiful and a little bit of romance in it, which is a lot of fun. So definitely a great read. Then I read Alice Feeney's Rock Paper Scissors. This one was it's a thriller, and I think this was my first Alice Feeney, and I listened to it on audiobook, which was a really great way to read it. And I loved the scenery, I loved the setting, and I like how it told non-linear timelines, or there were different timelines going on, and there were letters, and that was a lot of fun, and just how it all fell into place at the end. The ending was kind of weird, but that's what these books are for. They're not meant to really make, like, I mean, it makes sense, but I don't know how realistic it is, but maybe it is. But yeah, the very unsettling book, I will say. I also read Haru Zombie Dog Hero, which is another unsettling book. This one has some trigger warnings for animal lovers. This one was hard to read in a lot of places. I was a little bit shocked at how, this was by Ellen O, by how violent and descriptive the dog abuse was. It broke my heart. It's kind of about like testing on animals, and it was a great book though. It kept me turning. It was thrilling. It was definitely going to have a sequel. Zombies. It was a fun read, but it was also very like, oh my gosh, disturbing. It was a couple places that were hard to keep turning the pages. Another book that I read by Frances O'Rourke Dowell is called Hazard. This is a fun format book. It had text messages and poetry, and I liked seeing the different forms and emails, the different forms of communication between characters. This was a great book about just I think it's, oh my goodness, I can't remember if it was anger issues or grief. Just a lot of inner struggle that I thought was portrayed very well in this book. And this is a book that I read because I want it to be a mentor text for my own writing, and it definitely is. And here's The Wicked King by Holly Black. I already kind of talked about that. This book made me so angry at the end. I'm ready to read the third one, but I'm kind of waiting because it's right here. I need to read some of the other books on my 30 in 3 challenge, and it's not on there, even though I should have put it on there. It is a book I own though, so I wouldn't feel terrible if I read it, but I really want to work on these 30 books and then come back to it, but we'll see. Because, oh, excuse me, the more I think about The Wicked King, the more I just want to get back into that world and back into those characters and figure out what the heck is happening. Totally on another end of the reading spectrum, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This one was such a good book. I love Emily Henry. I've enjoyed all of her books. This one I listened to on audiobook, and it was just so much fun to see. I think in a previous video I said just like watching them torture themselves. It's 2 characters who were together. They broke off their engagement, and they have to go spend time with their friends, and their friends are getting married, and they don't want to like ruin anything, so they're not going to tell anyone they're not together, and so they're forced proximity, they're forced to be together. Oh, it was so good. The playing with the emotions, the not knowing how each other really feels, the miscommunication, fantastic. And the setting is a lot of fun. It made me definitely want to go to the beach. I Am Kavi by Thashanthi Panwira. This was sent to me by the author and on NetGalley as well. Book and Verse, middle grade, comes out, I believe, in September 19th, and this one was a historical fiction in the Sri Lanka Civil War in the 90s. So it's very informative, and you get to see a different, or I got to see a different world than what I know, and I also don't know much about Sri Lanka, so that was kind of that was really cool. And then I'm sorry, my nose itches, and I really liked the issue of class and education, how important that is, and just trying to fit in. There was typical middle school fitting in issues and the emotions in this book. Again, I talked about how much I love books that have strong emotions. This is it. So I'm really excited for this book to come out in the world, and I'll also be talking with the author on my Legit Kidlit channel, so I'm excited for that. If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy was almost one of my favorites. It should have probably been one of my favorites because I giggled so hard in this book and I just loved it. It was like a Bachelor Cinderella story, but just so much more, and talked about weight and media and romance, and just I ate this book up. And it's part of a series meant to be novels, but they're written by different authors, so I highly recommend checking them out because they're a lot of fun. The Vanquisher, Secret of the Reaping. This is by Kaylin Barron, who I've talked about. Sorry, I have a cat down here and he keeps pushing against me. I've talked about Kaylin because she is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors, especially horror. And this book is a middle grade, but it's vampires. It's actually a sequel, and I didn't read the first one, but I went into this one just fine. I would like to know some of the backstory about what happened to their friend that starts off. I don't want to say anything, but I don't want to spoil if you want to read the first one. But I would like to see how that all played out. But man, this book just, the vampires were super, the creepy level was up there, and the suspense was up there. And it's like this community of vampire hunters, which is really cool. And it's like a group, and then it's their kids. And so it's a really cool, interesting dynamic. And I like having the parents' backgrounds, like having those different generations. And these powerful vampires that, like, how they fortify their house and how they get past that. Just, man, I really liked this book. I really liked it. And it was a quick read. Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I read this one because I have yours truly, and I would like to read that. But I wanted to read Part of Your World first. Loved this romance so much. Ate it up. It was similar vibes of If the Shoe Fits. Like, I was giggling. I was angry. It also had very good, depth to it. Good subplots. And it was dual point of view. And I was very curious throughout the whole book, like, how's this going to work out? And then when it did, it felt good. It wasn't like a cop-out or anything, I didn't feel like. I also read If You Read This, which is by Corrine Getton, and this was a book with letters in it, which I love different media. I like that. And this one was, her mom has passed away. It's her 12th birthday, and she gets a box of letters from her mom, and they all lead to some kind of surprise. So there's a mystery, there's her dealing with grief, her family's dealing with grief, and then the adventure that they go on because of these letters is a lot of fun. And then the ending, what the surprise is, was really beautiful. I loved the setting. The setting is in the Caribbean, and it was beautiful. It was on like a resort, so you got to see that side of things. And, I think it was a great portrayal of grief. My heart hurt so much through this book, probably because I'm a mom. But I think it's a middle grade book, but I think anyone would enjoy it. I really do, and find connections to it. I also read, so you can see like my different, I'm like adult, young adult, middle grade, adult, young adult, middle grade. So this is a young adult. We Don't Swim Here. It's a horror kind of ghost story. There's a lot of mystery. I listened to the audiobook and I raved about it. I just remember loving the different voices. I love the different characters as dual point of view. I loved the mystery of why we don't swim here. Like, that's what the people say. And like, there's all these superstitions. There's rules for this town. And it just was So intriguing. And then at the end, just things happening. That last like hour of the book, I could not stop. Could not stop. It was so good. Highly recommend this. Okay. Middle grade fantasy. Momo Arashima steals the sword of the wind. This one was by Misa Sugiura. She was on My Legit Kidlit, and I know I talked about this before, but she was on My Legit Kidlit, and my daughter watched it and was like, I want to read that book. I love the fox in it. And so we got it, and it was a lot of fun. I liked the plot twists. I liked the settings and the journey that the characters go on into the different realms and the different worlds and different creatures and different gods. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this book. It's a great adventure, and it had some humor in it. So definitely for fans of Rick Riordan, I think you would eat this up. Adult audiobook that I read was Emma Straub's This Time Tomorrow. This one is like a sci-fi because there's time travel, but it's definitely not, a typical sci-fi. And my heart throughout the whole book, because it's basically her trying to save her dad who's dying. And she goes back in time to try to fix the moments that, to keep him from dying. And, just the thought of if you could fix anything in your life, or what point was the most important in your life, or where was the point where you changed, all those questions. And then happiness, what that is it marriage, is it kids, is it work? Yeah, a really powerful book. I would recommend. I really enjoyed it. Another Kaylin Barron book, My Dear Henry, also could have probably been one of my favorites. Probably should have been. It is. And it's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde remix. And there's more of these remixes, and they're on, one's on Kindle Unlimited, the Little Women one. And so I hope to read all of them. Or I've also got the Wuthering Heights one as well. But My Dear Henry was romantic and dark and spooky and mysterious, and I ate it up. I loved this book so, so much. Alice Feeney, I read again. Daisy Darker, I also listened to this audiobook, but I also had it from Book of the Month Club. So I'm happy that I kind of knocked out, a book that I owned as well. And this one was a great, kind of like a clue book, and Then They Were None, which I haven't read before, but I know the premise by Agatha Christie. But just people start dropping like flies in this book, and you can't escape the house because you're trapped. And just the ending was interesting. If I read more Alice Feeney, I know I will, but the endings are interesting. She has an interesting way of ending her books, and not that they're really not believable, but they're really, yeah. But I like that because I don't expect them. And here is Forever Is Now. Look at that gorgeous thing. Still my favorite. Mariama J. Lockington. You can see her wrapping her hands in the cover. She does boxing to help with her anxiety. I loved this book with its political action, its how to find your voice, how to be an activist in a way that you, your way of being an activist. Black Lives Matter. Agoraphobia is in here. There's also romance and breakups, and yeah, it's a great book. I loved this book so much. 13 Doorways, Wolves Behind Them All by Laura Ruby. This one's a hard book to describe. It's told from a ghost point of view. So this book is really good for people, I would say, kind of like The Book Thief. There's a lot going on, and it's not really told very straightforwardly. You find connections in different pieces, and I like books like that. It's just hard to describe them. It's also kind of historical, and it takes place mostly in an orphanage in the 1900s, and just is a really beautiful book, a really beautifully written book. This is definitely a literary fiction, I guess I would say. I listened to The Jump by Brittany Morris, which is as an audiobook. The Jump is multiple POV. There's 4 characters, and they all have very different personalities, which I really liked. They're all different backgrounds. It's very diverse, and they're all friends, and they all do these cartography or cryptology. Oh my gosh. Anyway, they solve puzzles online. There's a forum, and they're part of a team. And end up getting involved in something that they didn't really sign up for or didn't think they were signing up for. And so the plots and the twists in this is really cool, and seeing them interact with other groups and how those dynamics are and their rules. And it also talked on things on homelessness, racism. It talked about the like corporations kind of taking over areas and not being fair to workers. There was a lot of things talked about in this book, but in a very good way. And man, it was a thrilling adventure. I could not put this book down. And again, I love the multiple points of view. I think it really keeps you moving in the book. And her previous book was called Slay, and it took place in a video game. So she writes very cool settings. I really like it. I really like Brittany Morris's ideas. Another book, adult read, was Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. This one was multiple points of view as well. And it mostly, well, I guess there was like a third of each. Yeah, each character had about a third of the book. So there was like the chauffeur kind of bodyguard. Then there was a rich, Sunny. His name was Sunny. Character, rich crime boss kind of character, son of a crime boss, and then a journalist, and also love interest. And it was a book about, crime families. It took place in India and New Delhi. Homelessness as well in this book. So that was kind of interesting that I read 2 books that kind of dealt with that. Class, corruption, money, forbidden love, all of that is in this book. And yeah, it's violent at times, but highly recommend. Graphic novel I read was Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, and this one was a reread. And I also got it on audiobook, and I never listened, but I might just listen to the first bit to see how it is. But I know that there's a Netflix movie or TV show spinoff from this, so I'm excited. I really enjoyed the humor in this book. And it's just sly humor, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. And also just found family, and this character, Nimona, is just so cool. Fiery, wonderful character. Sybil was the book about 16 personalities, and this one took me forever to read. It was for my book club. It was a reread, but I read it a long time ago. And well, I don't really know my thoughts on it. I've talked about it before. I don't know if it's true or not. There's speculation and controversy surrounding her story. Definitely an interesting take on psychology. So, if you're interested about multiple personalities, I do think it was an interesting book to read. Now, here's another one that should probably be, and it is on my favorites, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Yes, and this one, I'm excited to read more by Rebecca Ross. She has some other books that I'm curious about, but this one has been kind of, as My Fourth Wing Happened, and then Divine Rivals. And they're, it's both fantasy romance, but they are very different. And this one is more historical and like, it feels historical fiction. It's hard to describe, but it feels like it takes place in like the 20s. But it's also magic and gods, and there's a war. The gods are at war, and there's magical typewriters, which is so cool. And then, the ending. I mean, I'm saying all these things that probably you've heard, but I can't wait for the second book. It comes out in October, and I really, really need that book. Yeah. And that's all the books I read for July. So I'm grateful for another month as a Bookstagrammer, booktuber. Thank you all for being here. Like and subscribe. Come back. And take care. Happy reading. See ya.